Okay, good evening, everyone. We start the shir tonight. Is dedicated by Yisrael Fisher in honor of his birthday, both his English and his Hebrew birthday. It should be zeicha, that it should be a year of gesund and everything wonderful for you. And we wish Mazel Tov to Marshall. The saying is, we welcome you to the Grandpa Club, the Zaidi Club, and the Mirz Hashem by the Chasana with gesund. We're dedicated, as always, by Shalom Fogel, Yonishmas Yaakov Zeb ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas God, Yosef ben Siyam ben Yaakov Zeb, by Baruch Ian, Yonishmas Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther Bas Gittel, Esther Bas Yaina, Avram ben Shmuel HaKayin, by Yaakov Yumansky, with our Satov to the Rav and the Zoom family, Nachas from children and grandchildren, A.B. Spry, Ed Salah from London, and Joshua Rosenberg. We welcome here Mark Frankel and Shelley Zeitlin, Shalom Fogel, Aaron Swade, Bel Zachter, Rabbi Kranz, Ben Zion Cohn, Eddie Chazan, Stephen Holtzman, Marshall Castle, Irving Fishbaum, Dr. Guy, Yisrael Fisher, Yitzi Fuchs, Michael Elliott, Yitzi Berish, Shimon Klein, Dr. Black, Nachman Chaplin, Moshe Lehman, Ilya Shutman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, and Naftali Jablin. They all, it's great to have you here in Shul. We have Gedalia Engel, we have Chaim Kramer, Rich Lenner, Michal Avram Chavin, we have Yaakov Yumansky with us tonight, not Yaakov, Menachem Yumansky, and Ruvain Shanit with us here in Shul. We are holding on the bottom of Kuf Mem Daled Amid Beis. The Gemara had asked a stira, a contradiction, that on one hand it said that if the father gave shushbinas, if the father gave as a best man the gifts that are given by a best man, then when it's his turn to return it, if he's not alive, the money is returned to the estate in general. In one place it says the money is returned to that son that gets married that he sent the gifts with. So which one is it? So here we're holding now with Shmuel's answer. The Shmuel Amar, which is situated 8 lines from the bottom, the Shmuel Amar, normally, if let's say the father sent the gift with his son Ruvain, then when Ruvain gets married and the father is not alive, the gifts would return to Ruvain. Where does it say the gifts return to the estate? That's where Ruvain died. And he died childless, and Shimon was miyabim his wife. So normally Ruvain gets what was coming to Shimon. He does not get it in this case, because this was not something that was there when the father died, but came afterwards. That's called ro'i, and a yavam doesn't get beroi ki b'murzik. And that's what the Gemara answers. Here it's talking about where Ruvain, the one that brought the shushbinas, he died, and Shimon was miyabim his wife. He's not entitled to get the return of the shushbinas. He doesn't get an inheritance, something that's coming as if it was there at the time that Ruvain died. Now, but that implies that, let's say Ruvain brought shushbinas for Chatzkel. That implies that Chatzkel has to return it now, even though Ruvain is not alive anymore. Michlal, the idach mishalem. But Chatzkel should say, what do you mean? If Ruvain was here, I would be mesamech with him. Now that he's not here, I don't have to. Lema tnuli shushbini, give me my best man, and then I'll return it to him. but he's not alive anymore, so I don't have to do it for somebody else. Be like Tanya. Here's an interesting question. A man gives a ring to a woman being Mekadesha, and then the man dies. Does she have to return the ring? So Makom Shenogu La'ar the Kiddushin Marzirin. In the place where the minig is to return the ring, you return it. Makom Shenogu Shalai La'ar the Ein Marzirin. V'amar Rav Yosef Ba'aba Amar Rav Ukva Amar Shmuel Lo Yishanu Ela Shemei Sahi. The question is only if she dies. Aval Meis Hu, but if the Chassan dies, she doesn't have to return it. Ein Marzirin. She doesn't have to return it. My time. What's the reason? She could say, what do you mean? Let him come and I'll be married to him. She could say, Tanuli Bali, give me my husband, and I'll rejoice with him. I'm not holding it back. So says the Gemara, if Ruvain did Shishbinis for Chatzkel, and then Ruvain died, why should Chatzkel have to return it? Name it Tanuli Shishbini. Give me the one that was my best man, and then I'll rejoice with him. But if he's not alive, why do I have to give it to the estate? Says, well, you're right. But what happened over here is that Ruvain did rejoice with Chatzkel for 7 days during the wedding. He just didn't bring the gifts. And before he brought the gifts, he died. He rejoiced with him for the 7 days of the feast, and he didn't get a chance to give him the gifts at Shemes. Now, the Gemara says this, that we say, that in the event that the chassan dies, she doesn't have to return the ring, because she could say, give me my chassan and I'll rejoice with him. Lema, let's say this question of Tnuli Baili, give me my husband, Vasamekimoi, and I'll rejoice with him, and therefore I don't have to return the ring. Tanoi, let's say it's Machloikas Tanoi. The Tanya, Hama'are says to Isha, if one betroths a woman, once he betroths a woman, he becomes chayiv to give her a ksuva. So if they get divorced, Besula Gaiva Masayim, if she was a virgin, she collects 200. Va'almana mana, a widow collects 100. Mokum shenogu la'ar the Kiddushin marzirin, a place where the minig is to return the Kiddushin, they return it. Mokum shenogu shaloi la'ar the Kiddushin, where the minig is not to return the ring, ein marzirin. Divrei Rav Nosson. Now it seems to be that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says the same thing. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Aimer be'emes amru. In truth, they said, Mokum shenogu la'ar the marzirin. In the place where the minig is to return the ring, you return it. Mokum shenogu shaloi la'ar the ein marzirin. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says the same exact thing as Rabbi Nosson. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Aina Tanakama. Elalav, it must be that they're arguing about the case where the chassan died. Elalav, Tluli Baili Vasamachima Ikabenayu, the Chesurei Mechsra, something is missing over here. We don't got the full text. And the full text is as follows. The Chesurei Mechsra Avacha Ketani. Hama'ari says to Isha, when one betroths a woman, Besula Gaiva Masayim, Besula collects 200, Almana Mana. Bamed Vamurim Dahadr Be'ihu. That's in the event that he gave her a divorce. Aval Mesa, if she dies, Malkum Shinagu La'azir Marzirin, if it's a minig to return the ring, you return it. Malkum Shinagu Shala'azir Ein Marzirin. V'dafka Shemesa he. Rav Nosson holds that's only if she dies. Aval Mesu, but if he dies, she doesn't have to return the ring. Ein Marzirin, my time. She could say, look, I'm ready. Let him come and I'll be besimcha with him. I'll live with him. Tanuli Bali Vasamachimai. Vas Reb Yehuda Nasi Lameima Be'emes Amru. In truth, both are dependent on minik. Bein Meisu, Bein Meisahi. Whether he died or whether she died. If the minig is to return the ring, you return it. And according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, where he dies, she can't say, give me him and I'll be mesameach. Tnuli bali v'asamechimai. That's what the Gemara wants to suggest. But the Gemara nixes this. Like, the Kuli Alma, everybody holds that if he dies, she could say, look, I'm ready to live with him. Yechayla shetaymer tnuli bali v'asamechimai. Udemeisu, and where he dies, Kuli Alma like pligi, everybody holds that she doesn't have to return the ring. Ki pligi shemeisahi. The argument is where she died. And where she died, the question is, do we say when a person gives Kiddushin, he gives it as a permanent gift no matter what happens? I love you very much. Here's Kiddushin. It's for this moment. Whatever happens, it's yours. Tivuin means, Tava means to drown, to sink. And here, the question is whether we say Kiddushin is given as it's sunk in. It's a permanent thing. It's a gift for right now, and that's it. Reb Nosson suffered Kiddushin lavdiv tiduvuin. Kiddushin is not given as sunk in, and therefore it depends on the minig. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi suffered Kiddushin l'tivuin. Says, well, what do you mean? But Rabbi Yehuda Nasi also says it's dependent on the minig. So you see that it's not given permanently. Says the Gemara, no, that's talking about the savlonis, the gifts. Together with Kiddushin, they gave gifts. Right? They have a bracelet, you have a watch. Savlonis, the gifts, whether you have to return the watch, whether you have to return the bracelet, and place where the minig is to return it, you return it. Where the minig is not to return it, you don't return it. V'hani tanoi kahani tanoi. And these tanoim argue in the same achloikis as the following tanoim. The Tanya, kitcha bekikar. If a man is mekadesh a woman with a piece of bullion of silver. You know, they used to make these blocks of silver, bullion. So it was a mekadesh with a bullion of silver. Besula gaiva masayim. Besula, if it doesn't come to fruition, so the besula gets 200. V'almana mana divrei meir. Rabbi Yehuda Imer besula gaiva masayim. The besula gets 200. Almana mana, and she has to return what's left extra from that bullion of silver, because she has to return the kedusha. She keeps of the bullion 200 zuz if she's a psula, 100 zuz if she's an almana, and she returns the rest of the bullion. So Rameir holds that she doesn't have to return the bullion because kedushin l'tivuin nitnu. Rabbi Yehuda says she has to return. She gets the ksuva, and anything extra she has to return. Rabbi Yaisi basically is mesupik. And therefore, Rabbi Yaisi Aimer, kitcha be'esrim, if he was mekadosh her with 20, now 20 shekel is, each shekel is 4 zuz. So if he was mekadosh her with 80, so, and if she's a widow, so if he was mekadosh her with 80, nice and la shloisha chatzoin. What happens is that he holds that she has to return the kedushin. So if she's a widow, so if the kedushin was 80 zuz, if the kedushin was 20 shkalim, which is 80 zuz, so noisin la shloishin chatzoin, he has to give her 30 halves. What's pshat 30 halves? He has to give her 30 halves is 15 shkalim. That's 60. Why? Let me explain to you Rabbi Yaisi's logic. Rabbi Yaisi is mesupik. whether you have to return the Kedushin or not. So if he was Mekadosh with 20, which is 80 zuz, so she could keep 40 and she has to return 40. And if she's a widow, he has to give her a ksuv of 100. So therefore, 40 of the 80 she keeps. The other 40 counts as 40 to her 100 of the ksuva because she's a widow. So now he has to give her 60 more. 60 more is 30 halves. 30 halves is 15. 15 times 4 is 60. So he already gave her 40. He has to give her 60 more. Kitcha b'shloishim, if he was Mekadosh with 30 shkalim, 30 times 4 is 120 zuz. Of the 120 zuz, she gets to keep 60, half, because maybe she doesn't have to return half. 60 she has to return. So that means that he already gave her 60 of the ksuva, and she's a widow, he has to give her 40 more. That's 20 halves, in other words 10. 10 times 4 is 40, so he has to give her 40 more. Now, b'maya skina, what are we talking about here? Ilema shemesa, if she died, then she wouldn't be entitled to a ksuva. She doesn't get a ksuva if she dies. Miyasla ksuva. Vela shemesu, it must be that he died. Says the Gemara, then amai marzeres loyas ashar. Why does she have to return anything? V'nema tnuli bali v'asamech. Give me my husband, I'll rejoice with him, which we said everybody agrees to. Ve'elabeishis Yisrael shezinsa. It must be that the woman committed adultery. Ubamai. If she committed adultery willingly, she's definitely not entitled to ksuva. Ibaratzen miyasla ksuva. Ve'elabainis, she was raped. If she was raped, they don't have to dissolve the marriage. Mishra shayulei. It must be talking about ve'elabeishis kayin shenensa. It's talking about the wife of a kayin that got raped. Now, it's not her fault. But a kain is not allowed to live with his wife if she was raped. She's still entitled to ksuva. It's not her fault. The question is, does she have to return the kedushin? Do we say kedushin l'tivuah nitna? It's given permanently, even if something happens with the marriage. Or be kedushin l'tivuah nitnu kamifli. Rameir sabi kedushin l'tivuah nitnu. So therefore, she gets to keep it. Plus, she gets the ksuva. Rabbi Yehuda savalav l'tivun nitnu. So she gets out of the bullion the amount of the ksuva, and the rest she returns. Rabbi Yosef mesafkalei l'tivun nitnu ilai. He's not mesupik whether she gets to keep the kedushin or not. The hilcha kitcha be'asrim, if he was mekadosh and she's a widow, it has to be that she's a widow. So a ksuva is 100. So if he was mekadosh with 20, which is 80. 20 shkalim is 80 zuz. So she gets to keep half of that. That's 40. 40 she has to return. 40 she has to return. So that's put towards her ksuva of 100. He has to give her 60 more. So therefore, nice and lo esrim chatzan. He gives her, nice and lo shloishim chatzan. He gives her 15. Because he has to give her 60. And 30 halves is 15. 15 times 4 is 60. Kitcha b'shloishim. If he's mekadosh with 30, 30 times 4 is 120. Now that they can't live together, so we're not sure if she keeps, so she gets to keep 60 of the 120. 60 she has to give back. So we apply that 60 to her ksuva of 100. Now he has to give her 40 more. So nice and la esrim chatzayin, 20 halves, which is 10. 10 times 4 is 40. Amar Rav Yisber min Yomi, Amar Rav Nachman, b'kol makom shenagu lahalzer machzirin. In any place where the minig is to return, you should return it. V'tirgama, what does it mean in any place? Narda. Shar bavel mai. What about the rest of bavel? Rabbi Yosef Dimri Travayu Morei Hadrei. You return the gifts, like the bracelet, like the linens. Kedushay Loy Hadrei. The ring doesn't get returned. Amar Papa. Hilchasa, the law is, Bein shemeis hu, bein shemeisa he, whether he died, whether she died, v'hadr behu, or he divorced her, morei hadre, all of the gifts are returned, kedushay loy hadre. Hadra ba'ihi, if she backed out, afilu kedushay name hadre. If she backed out, then even the ring is returned. Ameimer says, even if she backs out, we don't return the kedushin. Because we don't want people to think that if we return the kedushin, it was nullified. And then he might come to marry her sister. If we return the ring, people might think that the kedushin wasn't a good kedushin, and then he might come to marry her sister. Of course, so Rav Ashi says, nah, we're not worried about that. Nobody's going to think they never had a kedushin because we know she got a get. That she was married. However, the Rav Ashi bedusi, that which Rav Ashi says is foolish, or berusi should be said outside. The Ika de Shama Baha, there are some that hear about the returning of the ring, V'loi Shama Baha, and they don't hear about the get, and they might think that the kedushin wasn't the kedushin, and then he might come to marry her sister. Now the Mishnah says, Shushbinis nigvis bebezdin. The shushbinis is a serious thing. If Marshall agrees to be the best man for Chatzka, and then and he spends money, he buys gifts and everything, and then afterwards Marshall marries a second wife, he's a Sephardi, so he marries a second wife, I hear what he says, it's enough one. But imagine how many grandchildren you could have. He marries a second wife. The man has to bring gifts like Marshall brought for him. And that's collected in business. In other words, Marshall can sue for it in business. Says the Gemara, Chamisha dvarim nemru b'shushbinas. 5 things were said about shushbinas. Nigvis bebezdin, it can be demanded in court. The chayzeres ba'inasa, the only time it has to be given back is only when Marshall gets married. The ein ba mishum ribis, there's no ribis. That means that if the man provides Marshall bigger gifts than Marshall provided for him, there's no problem of ribis. The 4th thing is the ein hashviyas misham tasa. If Shemitah comes, it doesn't release the debt for the man to eventually give Marshall the gifts. And the eina bechar noitel ba pishnai. And the firstborn doesn't get in a double portion in this shishbinis that returns to the estate. And now the Gemara explains all 5 of these things. Nigvis bebezdin, Marshall can sue to get back the gifts in bezdin. My time, kamil v'dami, it's like a debt. But ve'ein ba mishum ribis, why? Because the lav adata dohachi yovle, it wasn't made up that Marshall should get extra. There was no set amount that, well, you're going to give me more. Ve'ein hashviyas misham tasa, it's not released by Shemitah. You know why? Because the only time it's released by Shemitah is when the debt is due when Shemitah comes. But here, since Marshall didn't get married yet when Shemitah comes, there's no way for it to release. The like karina be lo yigos. In other words, the reason why Shemitah relinquishes is because you're not allowed to press for it. But here, there's no pressing, because since Marshall didn't get married yet, there's nothing to press for. Because it's not due yet, and therefore at the time that the father died, it wasn't due yet to return the gifts. It's only something that potentially is coming. Now, Shishbinis is a very, very, very exact obligation. Amrav Kana, Klola de Shishbinisa, the principle of Shishbinis Hava B'masa, if the wedding took place in the city, Marshall got married in the city, then the best man that Marshall took care of should have came. Shama Kol Tabla, if a bell was rang that the wedding is on, so the man should have heard that there was a simcha in town. He should have found out that Marshall was getting married, and he should have came. Lo Shama Kol Tabla, if he didn't hear the bell, then it was Marshall's responsibility to let him know, to send him an invitation. Now, if the man didn't show up to be Mesameach Marshall, Tarumas Ishlay, Marshall could have tinus on him. The bottom line, though, is Shlume Mishalim. But he has to give the gifts to Marshall. But he's entitled to deduct something because he didn't get to eat the 7 meals with him. He didn't get to have the stuffed cabbage at Marshall's wedding. He didn't get to have, the fricassee and the frankfurters at the different Sheva Brachas and the bourbon. So va'ad kama, how much could he deduct? Amar Abaya nogu b'nei genana, the customary weddings is ad zuzah. If the gift that Marshall was going to bring was a zuz, I see b'kape okle b'kreisi. The zuz that he would have brought, he would have ate during the meal, and therefore it's a wash. So Marshall doesn't have to give anything. Ad arba, if the gifts were going to be 4 zuz, then mishalim palga. Then he has to pay, since he missed all the meals, he has to pay half. He has to pay 2 zuz. Mikan ve'elach, if there was a bigger gift, 100 zuz, then inish gechashivusei. Then it depends, because a guy that brings gifts of 100 zuz, then they make very great festivities. So each case is different how much you deduct. Now, Tana Rabbanan, let's say Marshall was the best man for Chatzkel. So, Tana Rabbanan, Osi Imai Befumbi, when Marshall was Chatzkel's best man, he did it in a big public wedding, and there was great festivities. Ubikesh Lasis Imai Betzina. Now, Marshall wants Chatzkel to celebrate with him when he makes a private affair. Chatzkel can tell Marshall, Befumbi Esimach, I celebrated with you in a big public affair, Kederach Shasisi Imi, just like you celebrated with me in a big public affair. I'll celebrate with you if it's a big public affair, not a private nothing. Kederach Shasisi Imi Asei Imai. Besula. Let's say Chatzkel celebrated with Marshall with a marriage of a virgin. Ubikesh Lasis Imai Balmona. And Marshall wants him to return the favor with a widow. Yakalaimala could tell him Besula Asa Imach. I celebrated with you with right, Chatzkel Marshall did with Chatzkel with Besula. Ubikesh Lasis Imai Ba'amona. And now he wants Chatzkel to celebrate with him when he's marrying with a widow. Yakalaima Besula Ese Imach. I'm only going to do for you when you have a big simcha with a basula, kederach shasisi me, like you did with me. Ase imay b'shniya. Let's say Marshall celebrated with him a second marriage. Ubikesh lasis imay b'rishayna, and he wants him to celebrate with him with the first marriage. When you marry another woman, I'll do for you like you did for me. He did with him with one wife. Marshall is marrying now two wives. Marshall does things on a grand scale. I'll do for you with one wife. Me with one wife.
He's only marrying one at a time, so how does he ask him for both? He's only marrying one woman.
You mean I'll say Ma'av?
It's only one at a time. He does one and then
maybe he's marrying both at the same time.
The person's allowed to do that?
I mean, he did it. So maybe a Ma'av Simcha, but he did it. Tanu Rabbanan. Now the Gemara teaches as follows. Because Mark said he's sick and tired of not having a Agadita. We're going to give you some Agadita. Is Mark here? Yeah, just hiding. Tanu Rabbanan.
Kind of the other way.
Tanu Rabbanan, Asur Nichsin, one who is rich in property, and Asur Pumbi, and he's well known to be rich. Zel Balagados. This is a person that knows Agadita. Person that knows Agadita, since people love Agadita, Divrei Agadita Moishkenes Alev, that's a richness that everybody knows about, because everybody is drawn to Agadita. Asir Sloim, Asir Tekua, somebody is rich with money, and he's rich with expensive oil of Tekua. Tekua has rich oil. Zepal Pilpul. This is a person that knows the scholastics of Pilpul, of knowing how to make intricate, complex calculations in the Gemara. Asur Meshach, Asur Kamas, one who is measured rich, one who has great richness stored. Zel Bal Shmuos. This is somebody that knows a lot of rabbinical teachings. That which it says, Hakol Tzrichin L'Morei Chitaya, everybody needs the owner of wheat. Wheat bread is the staple of life. That's Gemara. Gemara, to unravel the contradictions in the Mishnah and Lasuke Shmaitza Aliba de Hilchasa, that is, everybody needs that. Amar Abzeira, Amar Rav, Ma'idich Siv Kol Yemei Ani Roim, all the days of the poor are evil. V'toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, and one who is merry of heart has a constant banquet. So, Kol Yemei Ani Roim Zebal Gemara. That's a person that learns Gemara, because Gemara, everything is so complicated. Questions, answers, back and forth. Toivlei Mishnah Tamid, a merry man. The Mishnah is simple. Zebal Mishnah. Others say just the opposite. Rav Amar Ipcha. Rav says just the opposite. Because when you learn Mishnayos, there's open contradictions, and without the Gemara, you're left stymied. I don't understand. This seems to be just the opposite of what we just said. Well, if you learn the Gemara, everything clicks. You get all the answers. One who minds rock will be sad. All he has is rock. He'll be weary. But Kaya eats him, one who splits the wood, he'll be warmed by it. Masiya Avonim, one who minds the stones, because he's left with all kinds of contradictions and questions. But Kaya eats him, he chops the wood, he's warmed by it, Elu Bali Gemara, because then they get unraveled all of the contradictions. Reb Chanina says, Kol Yemei Ani Roim Zeshi Yeshli Ishara. All the days of a poor man are bad. That's a shrew of a wife. Every day is unpleasant. V'toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, and one who is a good heart is a constant banquet. That's a good wife. Every day is a pleasure. Rabbi Yana Yomer, Kol Yemei Ani Ra'im, Zeh Istinis. That's a person that's very finicky, very fastidious. So everything bothers him. I can't drink this, I think somebody touched it. I can't sit down over here, I think somebody stepped on it. The Toivlei Mishta Tamad Zeh Shedaita Yafa, that's a person who's tolerant. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kol Yemei Ani Ra'im, Zeh Rachaman. That's a compassionate person. Compassionate person feels bad for everyone. I have a daughter. Her name is Rina Tzivya. When she was a little girl, we found her outside the house crying. So, Rina, what's the matter? We didn't see anything. She showed us there was a bird with a broken wing. She was crying for the bird. The bird will never be able to fly. Most people see that, they just walk past it. So a Rachaman is troubled by things that other people aren't troubled by. While Toivlei Mishta Tamid Zeh Achzari, that's somebody that's more callous. Rabbi Shuban Levi Amar Kol Yemei Ani Ra'im Zeh Shedaita Ksar. That's a person who has a mean spirit. A mean-spirited person, so everything bothers him. The Toivlei Mishta Tamid Zeh Shedaita Rechava. That's somebody that's more generous. Now, I could finish it, but I want to save some of the Agadita for tomorrow. So we'll stop over here. Rabbi say, I already did the Mishnah Yaimis. I want to welcome in also Jack Silverman, who joined us, Mo Kushner, who joined us, Richard Rosenzweig, who joined us, Shragi, who joined us. Shragi's birthday was today. We wish him a happy birthday. And Itchy Weintraub has joined us. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.